What is up, guys? Rick Cacus here, and today we're going to be testing out the new exotic raid weapon added in the Rise of Iron for the Wrath of the Machine raid, the Outbreak Prime Pulse Rifle in the OEST of the OG Destiny raids, the Vault of Glass. Now, before we get started with the video, I do need to quickly say that YouTube seems to have changed its algorithm to massively favor videos with more activity. Don't worry, guys, I'm not going to be doing like goals or giveaways every single video, anything like that, but just a quick reminder, if you watch this video and enjoy it, leaving a like and a comment really helps me out, so thank you in advance for the people who do that. Now, moving on though, there's a couple of reasons why we're doing this video today. Firstly, just out of curiosity, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, how the new weapons perform in the old raids. But also, you've got to remember that the Destiny level advantages are a little weird. There actually technically isn't level advantages in Destiny for PvE. Once you get to the same level of an enemy, you don't get any more advantages for being, further leveled above that enemy. So we actually get a pretty good idea of how this weapon would perform in the Vault of Glass if the Vault of Glass was ever updated to the current max level in, a future live update or something like that. Also, this is hard mode and all 6 of us are using the Outbreak Prime for the entire raid. So, without further ado, let's get started on the first section of the Vault of Glass, which is of course the outside section opening the Vault of Glass and letting you into the rest of the raid. In this section you have to hold open plates, which are going to charge a spire, or build a spire I should say, which shoots a laser beam into the door and makes it open. Now, the main enemy in this part is Praetorians. I still wake up in cold sweats, like imagining Praetorians. They, OG Destiny players, Year 1 players will know Praetorians, you don't fuck with them, alright? You do not mess around with Praetorians. They have no crits and they have a crap ton of health. And that actually means that the Outbreak Prime is surprisingly good against them. Now, that is because of the Corruption Spreads perk, the same perk that makes this weapon very good against bosses. So if you land 4 bursts on a single enemy, you're going to make Siva nanites appear that are going to damage that enemy even more, just making this weapon out DPS normal primaries. And against Praetorians, which take a bazillion shots to kill anyways, you're triggering the Corruption Spreads like quite a bit, just like how you trigger it quite a bit against bosses. So the Outbreak Prime is actually really good, probably one of the best primaries in the game actually, for taking down Praetorians like really fast. And against the rest of the Vex in this encounter, it's just fine. Again, the Praetorians are your main focus, and because the Outbreak Prime takes them down very well, I'm gonna have to say in this outside encounter, the first encounter for the Vault of Glass, 7.5 out of 10, potentially 8 out of 10. It is very effective. Moving on, we then have the Conflux Defense encounter in the Vault of Glass. This encounter has you try to prevent Vex from sacrificing themselves on these spires. That first one appears at the back of the map, then there's 2 on the right and left side of this map, and then there's all 3, and you have to defend all 3 in the last section of this encounter. And for this part, the Outbreak Prime is yet again actually great. It's really nice. It is really nice to be able to shoot an enemy in the crit and trigger the Outbreak Prime's Virulence perk, which makes it so that nanites spread when you get a headshot kill, and not have extremely annoying Siva balls seek after you. Like, that is the problem with this gun in the Wrath of the Machine. You almost don't want to get headshots in that raid because those stupid Siva balls pop up basically every time you do, and they can really damage you. But in the Vault of Glass, you don't have to worry about that at all, and it's really nice getting the most of this Virulence perk. With that being said, Virulence isn't any more effective against, normal adds than necessarily Firefly. Both of those perks are just going to cause extra damage to nearby enemies when you get a precision kill. So, looking at it objectively, the Outbreak Prime in this section, although it is effective, more effective than, your average primary weapon against adds, it isn't massively effective. This weapon is most comfortable against bosses. That's where its extra DPS really begins to shine. So against a section with almost entirely just normal adds, in fact entirely just normal adds, I would say it's about a 6.5 out of 10. Above average for sure, but nothing absolutely incredible. Additionally, funny enough, the Outbreak was actually kind of glitching out in this section. In the background gameplay, sometimes you'll see it just kind of freeze as I'm reloading and my character will still be moving around. This is kind of similar to when we took the Outbreak into King's Fall and actually glitched out Oryx himself. So when 6 people are all using the Outbreak and there's nanites everywhere, it can cause some problems, so just be aware of that. And moving on, we have the Oracle Encounter, where you have to take out a certain number of oracles in a certain time frame, or your entire team will die if they don't cleanse themselves. Now really the main factor of whether a weapon is good in this encounter is how good is it against oracles. Even now, when you go back and play the Vault of Glass and you're using the newest and the coolest weaponry, you can still have legitimate troubles taking down those oracles. They actually take quite a few shots, they soak up damage before they go down. And you need to be able to kill them quickly if you're going to overcome this encounter. So, is the Outbreak Prime good against oracles? Oh my goodness, yes. The main thing is that you get the corruption spreads triggering on these oracles. You can put 4 bursts into them easily, and then you will trigger nanites, and those nanites do bonus damage. You can see them in the background gameplay doing their work, doing a ton of bonus damage to these oracles, and because of that, you're able to take down oracles very, very fast. It honestly feels like when you're using the Outbreak Prime, like you're actually using one of the original Vault of Glass primary weapons, like the Fatebringer, like the Vision of Confluence. And that's because the original Vault of Glass weapons have the Oracle Disruptor perk, which makes them do more damage against oracles, which of course makes them great in, the Vault of Glass. But again, the Outbreak Prime is doing that bonus damage with the nanites. It honestly feels like it kind of has a different version of Oracle Disruptor. Aside from the oracles, as we've established, it's decently effective against taking down the normal adds, and it's pretty damn accurate, so you can take down those extremely annoying hobgoblin snipers that spawn on the outskirts of the map. Honestly, I would say that in the Oracle Encounter, the Outbreak Prime is an 8.5 out of 10. You really can't ask for much more than what this gun gives you in this encounter. Now moving on from there, we have our first real boss fight with the Templar Encounter. Now determining how this weapon actually performs in this encounter is a little bit more difficult than it is on the newer raids, and that's because with the OG raids you don't actually have damage numbers. It doesn't tell you how much damage you actually did to the Templar. So that means I had to use good old-fashioned mathematics. Luckily for me, I actually, for when I did the Outbreak Prime versus King's Fall video, I calculated and actually figured out how many nanites it produces and how much damage it actually does. So I had those numbers and I was able to just calculate what one magazine potential is. So in other words, what the absolute maximum damage one magazine of Outbreak Prime can do against certain bosses. Now for the majority of this encounter, I was doing 315 damage for a critical hit on the Templar. However, not every round in the magazine does that. The Outbreak Prime seems to have intrinsically kind of the Sign of 4 perk from the Steel Medulla, where every once in a while rounds will just do bonus damage. So around 4 rounds in the magazine, we're doing 472 damage instead. That makes for a total of 11,968 damage just for normal shots, all getting criticals for one magazine of Outbreak Prime. Now that is of course added with the nanites, which 42 of them will appear in total, 14 for each swarm, so 3 swarms with a total magazine equals 42, and those were doing, surprisingly, they were actually doing 42 damage each, which is 1,764 damage just in nanites. So that is a total of 13,732 damage for one magazine of the Outbreak Prime. Now that is of course considering that every shot you get is a critical shot. Sometimes you'll actually see more damage pop up. Sometimes I saw 323 damage pop up, but that's probably just due to a slight range variation. It's just kind of on the cusp of where this damage is sloping down in range. So realistically, you may be able to squeeze maybe a few more 100 damage out of the Outbreak Prime, but that is really a good number for what you could kind of expect when using this weapon. Now that seems very, very low compared to if you've been paying attention to how much damage this gun does, in the Wrath of the Machine. It does upwards of 400,000 damage for a single damage phase on Vosik. But that damage is actually pretty damn good. It's scaled down to accommodate for that much lower level on the enemy. The enemy has much less health, you do much less damage. So as you can see, by the end of just one teleportation phase, we've done more than half damage. All of us using Outbreak Primes with no other factors, no weapons of light, no tether. We have done more than half of the Templar's health, which is very, very good. So, I know that's a lot of damage and numbers to throw at you guys, but I want to let you know where this damage is actually coming from. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I said, yeah, it does 13,000 damage, okay, moving on. Like, you guys would probably want to know, well, where is that actually coming from? We're not going to go as in-depth for the rest of the encounters. But in total, fantastic damage output against the Templar, great against the random adds that come around as well, so I'd say in this encounter, probably an 8 out of 10. It's fantastic. And moving on, we then have the Gorgon's Maze encounter, where you have to make your way through the map without being spotted. However, you can actually engage and kill the Gorgons if you are spotted, and it introduces a mechanic that makes the rest of the Gorgons have more health, making it harder to kill each one. So we decide to see how many we could kill. And against the Gorgons, it actually had a slight damage bonus. We were doing 365 damage for a normal crit, 547 damage for a special crit, and 42.5 damage for the nanites. Now that's because sometimes it was showing 42, and for whatever reason, sometimes 43 would also appear. So I just split the difference, 42.5, and it brings us to a grand total of a potential damage of 15,653 for one magazine of Outbreak Prime against the Gorgons. And we were able to go through 3 Gorgons pretty easily and dying to the 4th one. Maybe we would have survived if it would have actually hit my tether and my teammate wouldn't have jumped in front of me, but that's another story. In any event, we then have the second to last encounter, and I want to point out, holy crap, we killed that first Gatekeeper really fast. This encounter has you go into 2 different portals and recover 2 relics to then take back out into the normal map and defend a central conflux from Minotaurs trying to sacrifice themselves there. and against the other Gatekeeper actually in one of the portals I went in, it also went down very fast. I was able to grab the shield and get out with no help. Just me soloing that was able to take down that Gatekeeper quite fast. For the rest of the encounter, I of course wasn't using the Outbreak Prime because I had the shield, but we've already established that the Outbreak Prime is good against Praetorians, and it will be good here as well. And moving on, we have the final Vault of Glass encounter against Big Daddy Atheon himself. Now this encounter has half the team teleport to a random location, kill oracles, and trigger times vengeance, which gives you bonus damage and actually gives you a chance to take down Atheon. Now with the times vengeance buff and no other factors, my team was able to nearly kill Atheon in one single damage phase. With a tether, we absolutely would have taken him down. However, there was some very interesting results, to say the least, in the damage numbers. Firstly, Atheon has a notoriously tricky critical to hit. You could swear you're shooting him directly in the stomach, and sometimes you still won't get those critical numbers to pop up. Additionally, a ton of different numbers were popping up. 1700, 2500, 3500, it was really weird. So I decided to just split the difference, take the average of those numbers, and with the normal shots, you're doing 91,800 damage against Atheon. However, with the Siva nanites added, you're only doing 93,585. And that's because the Siva nanites are still only doing 42.5 damage. Sometimes 42, sometimes 43. And that's because none of them were hitting the crit. They were all going out and coming back in and hitting him on the outside of his body. So they're basically doing no damage. Even with times vengeance, they were still only doing, 42 damage. So in this encounter, you're not really getting any sort of advantage for actually using the Outbreak Prime against Atheon. Because the Siva nanites do such a negligible amount of damage, you might as well use something like the Steel Medulla, which doesn't take up your exotic slot and gets a damage bonus with the Sign of 4 perk, and you just don't even have to worry about the Siva nanites. Again, they do basically no damage, so you're not getting the advantage of using the Outbreak Prime against Atheon. With that being said, when you're actually inside the portals and damaging the oracles, which you do have to kill quickly, you again get a pretty substantial bonus for using the Outbreak Prime. Unfortunately, I had to switch right away because I was running out of ammo, but you do trigger those Siva nanites, which give you a substantial damage bonus and really helps you take down those oracles quickly with a primary, which is exactly what you want. So it's very good against the oracles, enabling you to trigger times vengeance, but not actually as good when you're in times vengeance. So I would have to say probably, averaging everything out, 6.5 out of 10. Still above average, but nowhere near as good as it was in some of the other encounters we had in the Vault of Glass. And so, how good was the Outbreak Prime in the Vault of Glass overall? Well, I'd have to say, in the majority of encounters, it was well above average. One of the best parts is that you can do extra damage against oracles, which pop up a few times in the Vault of Glass. It's decent against ads, and it's very good against Praetorians and other bosses. So I would have to say, overall, the Outbreak Prime is a solid 7.5 out of 10, well above average in the Vault of Glass. And probably you could make the argument for an 8 out of 10 as well. And that's gonna wrap up this video. If you guys have any ideas for certain weapons you want to see tested in certain raids, leave it in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. if you want to see more Destiny content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And also remember to click the bell beside the subscribe button so that you're notified when I actually put up a new video. And if you guys want to keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.